Hello there, my lovelies. How are we doing? Merry Monday yet again. Right, okay, today, guys, we're going to be catching up with some more history. Although, for our viewers in the US, it might not be so much history to you, as we're going to be learning about all the ways that every founding father died. So I imagine many of you already know an awful lot of these, but for a foreigner, an alien, I think most of these are going to be they're going to be news to me. I can think off the top of my head, I'm sure I've seen a video similar to this, and I can remember a handful. Now I know there have been 4 presidents assassinated whilst in office. I can probably name 2 of those, but there's an awful lot more presidents, isn't there? If I remember hearing the story about a president that died from complications, I think pneumonia or something like that, but it was ultimately from refusing a coat, from delivering a very long speech. That's a bit of a bizarre way to go, isn't it? I think most, however, are just going to meet their untimely demise at the hands of an illness, heart failure, I think. I can't think of any other unusual ways I've heard of presidents passing away. So maybe they'll pop up in this video. So this video has been requested by one of my wonderful patrons. This is from Bryan. And Bryan says, I just found this video. How every founding father of the United States, of course, died. I knew about 2 of them, but I had no idea about the others. Oh, okay. Like I say, I think maybe I can hold my hand up as well, Bryan, and say maybe I know a handful of them, but not very many. But I love history, any history at all. So this is right up my street. So thank you for requesting this, my lovely. So this is from a channel called the Scribble Scholar. And let's check out this video, guys. And if you are enjoying these reactions, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much, my lovelies. If you're interested, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account. That link is over here. And if you would like to help support my channel any further, I have a Patreon account. And if you want to check that out at all, that link is in the description below there. Right, okay. How every founding father died. Let's go.
Thomas Jefferson. On July 4th, 1826, 83-year-old Thomas Jefferson died at Monticello, his Virginia plantation. Jefferson was the principal author of the Declaration of Independence and the 3rd president of the United States. In his final months, Jefferson suffered from severe uremia, toxemia, and an enlarged prostate. Jefferson was bedridden and in constant pain. His organs were shutting down one by one.
Yeah.
Despite his deteriorating condition, Jefferson became obsessed with a specific goal, surviving until July 4th, 1826. The date would mark the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson desperately wanted to live to see this momentous anniversary. He kept waking from his feverish delirium to ask his doctor the same question, is it the 4th? Jefferson stubbornly held on through sheer force of will. He remained alive through July 3rd, despite his failing body. Just past noon on July 4th, exactly 50 years after the Declaration was adopted, Thomas Jefferson finally died. Jefferson achieved his goal of dying on the 50th anniversary of American independence. His timing was almost supernatural in its precision. John Adams.
Oh, just before we move on to John Adams, that's crazy. That willpower. Oh my gosh. Oh, bless him. To be fair, even back then, 83 was a ripe old age that not many people could expect to live to, given standard of living and quality of life and all sorts. So that's pretty good going. 83 years old. I think that might be the life expectancy in the UK.
On July 4th, 1826, 90-year-old John Adams died at his home in Quincy, Massachusetts. Adams was the 2nd president of the United States and had been a driving force behind American independence. He was dying of congestive heart failure. Incredibly, Adams died on the exact same day as Thomas Jefferson, July 4th, 1826. Adams and Jefferson had been bitter political rivals during their careers. They'd reconciled in old age and become close friends through extensive correspondence. As Adams lay dying in Massachusetts, he had no way of knowing that Jefferson had already passed away earlier that day in Virginia. Communication was too slow for the news to reach Massachusetts. Adams believed his old friend was still alive. Adams' famous last words before his heart gave out were, "Thomas Jefferson survives." He died believing his friend had outlived him. In reality, Jefferson had died just hours earlier, approximately 500 miles away. The coincidence of both men dying on July 4th, 1826, exactly 50 years after independence, seemed almost miraculous to Americans. The simultaneous deaths of the last two revolutionary giants on that specific date became legendary. Benjamin.
Oh my gosh! You couldn't make that up. And they're both like political giants and besties. Oh, that's so sad. And it's so sweet at the same time. Oh, so John Adams passed away believing that that his friend had outlived him. Oh, that's so sweet. The sheer willpower of prolonging your death until you've seen the 50th anniversary. Oh, that's mind-blowing. That's nuts.
Franklin.
Benjamin
On April
Franklin.
17th, 1790, 84-year-old Benjamin Franklin died in
84 again.
Philadelphia. Franklin was the brilliant inventor, diplomat, and polymath who'd helped secure French support for the revolution.
Oh, these presidents so far, they have made it to a very, very good age, especially considering the time era.
His final years were spent in constant agony from a massive bladder stone and severe gout. Franklin required heavy doses of
gout.
opium just to function through the pain. However, the bladder stone wasn't what killed him. Franklin developed severe pleurisy,
I suppose it's bladder stones, so I'm thinking of kidney stones. Would that... I've never heard of anyone dying from bladder stones. Is that a fatal diagnosis?
inflammation of the lung lining. The pleurisy caused a massive infected abscess to grow inside Franklin's lung. The abscess filled with fluid and pus. As it grew larger, Franklin's breathing became increasingly labored. The abscess ultimately burst inside Franklin's chest. The rupture flooded his lungs with infected fluid and pus. Franklin essentially drowned from the inside out as his lungs filled with the contents of the burst abscess. The man who'd harnessed electricity and charted the Gulf Stream died suffocating in his own bed. Benjamin Franklin drowned in the fluids from his own ruptured lung infection.
Oh, that's horrendous, isn't it? I know medicine has come on leaps and bounds since then. It's a very, very gory end for poor Benjamin Franklin here.
Washington. On December 14th, 1799, 67-year-old George Washington died at his Mount Vernon estate in Virginia.
This was
2 days
medical, wasn't
earlier,
it?
Washington had been riding his horse through freezing rain and snow, inspecting his property for hours. He returned home soaked and chilled, but refused to change out of his wet clothes before dinner. The following day, Washington developed a severe throat infection, likely acute epiglottitis.
Now, I have heard this one. How could I forget? Okay, that's just triggered something right in the far back of my memory. One of the presidents died essentially from a very severe throat infection, so it's been George Washington. Oh, there's nothing worse than a throat infection. But these days, you just wouldn't associate it with being fatal. I suppose it's easy to say that, though, because we've got, antibiotics and painkillers and... Oh, poor George Washington.
His throat swelled dramatically, making breathing difficult. Washington's personal physicians were summoned to treat the former president. The doctors employed the standard medical practice of the era, bloodletting. They believed draining bad blood would cure inflammation and infection.
That's going to make him
3
really
different
weak.
physicians took turns opening Washington's veins. Over just 12 hours, the doctors drained approximately 80 ounces of blood from Washington's body. This represented 40 to 50% of his total blood volume. Washington slipped into hypovolemic shock as his body lost the ability to maintain circulation. Washington slowly suffocated from the throat swelling, while simultaneously dying from blood loss. His final words were, "'Tis well." The father of his country was essentially bled to death by the doctors trying to save him. Alexander Hamilton.
That I appreciate. We know an awful lot more medically now. But even back then, I think that amount of blood being let was very, very excessive. And I feel like his physicians probably should have been held accountable for that, because that's, that's not just sticking a few leeches on your arm, is it? That's taking a lot of blood. Oh my gosh, they would have known, surely. You can't take that volume of blood. No.
Hamilton. On July 12,
Alexander Hamilton.
1804, 47-year-old Alexander Hamilton died in New York City. Hamilton was the first Secretary of the Treasury and architect of the American financial system. The previous morning, he'd fought a duel with Vice President Aaron Burr in Weehawken, New Jersey.
Oh, this rings a bell as well. Is this the president that died the following day after having a duel? You'd kind of think that holding that office, holding that prestigious title would instantly mean that no one in their right mind would ever challenge you to a duel. No?
Burr fired
Maybe it's
a
political.
.54 caliber pistol at Hamilton from close range.
Ooh.
The heavy lead ball struck Hamilton above his right hip. The bullet didn't kill him instantly. It followed a devastating path through his body. The lead ball fractured Hamilton's rib, tore through his liver and diaphragm, and finally lodged in his lumbar vertebrae. The spinal impact instantly paralyzed Hamilton from the waist down. He collapsed to the ground, unable to move his legs. Hamilton remained entirely conscious after being shot. He was in screaming, unmanageable agony from the internal injuries. Doctors could do nothing to help him or ease his suffering. Hamilton endured 31 brutal hours of excruciating pain before finally dying. The founding father who'd shaped America's economy died in agony, paralyzed and helpless, fully conscious until the end. Gouverneur Morris.
I can't believe there's been a president that's passed away from the consequences of a duel. That wouldn't happen these days, would it, guys? No one in their right mind, everyone surrounding the president would never let them get into a duel. Oh, poor fella.
On November 6, 1816, 64-year-old Gouverneur Morris died in Morrisania, New York. Morris was known as the pen of the Constitution because he'd physically written the document's preamble and much of its final text. In his final days, Morris suffered from a severe urinary tract blockage.
Oh, no.
Morris was unable to urinate and experienced agonizing pain from the blockage. He needed a catheter inserted to clear the obstruction. However, Morris refused to wait for a doctor to arrive with proper medical instruments. Instead, Morris took matters into his own hands. He removed a rigid piece of whalebone from his wife's corset. Morris intended to use the whalebone as a makeshift catheter. Morris forced the sharp, inflexible whalebone up his own urethra, trying to clear the blockage himself. The improvised procedure went catastrophically wrong. Morris completely tore his internal urinary tract with the jagged whalebone. Gouverneur Morris died from massive internal hemorrhaging and infection caused by his self-inflicted injuries. The man who wrote We the People died from a horrifically botched attempt at self-surgery. Patrick Henry.
That might be the most horrendous presidential fatality that is on this list. That's crazy. That's actually nuts. I'm trying to think of a polite way to phrase this. He inserted a foreign object, a rigid foreign object, up his pee-pee hole. I mean, it shows how desperate he was. He must have been in absolute excruciating pain. That must have been agony, not being able to pee. However, just hang on until the doctors get there, because a catheter's not. It's not. I mean, it's a little bit invasive, sure, but it's not a serious procedure. No, you know what I mean? They wouldn't expect him to pass away, and it's not that difficult for doctors to be able to do, even back then. Just wait for the Dr. Morris.
Henry. On June 6, 1799, 63-year-old Patrick Henry died at his Red Hill plantation in Virginia. Henry was the revolutionary orator who'd famously declared, "Give me liberty or give me death."
Oh, yes,
He suffered from intussusception, a condition where the intestines telescope in on themselves, causing a complete blockage. The condition was excruciatingly painful.
Say that again.
Or give me death. He suffered from intussusception, a condition where the intestines telescope in on themselves, causing a complete blockage. The condition was excruciatingly painful and inevitably fatal without surgical intervention. However, surgery to correct intussusception was beyond the capabilities of 18th century medicine. Henry's doctor had no surgical options available.
No.
Instead, the doctor offered a desperate experimental treatment.
I think it would have been far more likely that should they even attempt this, I mean, it might not have even had any kind of ideology or anything to go with surgery of that sort, but that would have such a high risk, like a high fatality risk, even to attempt it.
He gave Henry a vial containing pure liquid mercury. The
What?
theory was that the sheer weight of the toxic heavy metal would physically push the twisted intestines back into place as it traveled through Henry's digestive system.
Okay, this is a
Patrick Henry
contender.
drank the mercury. The treatment failed completely. The mercury couldn't clear the intestinal blockage, and the toxic metal poisoned Henry's system. Henry died shortly after drinking the mercury. The man who demanded liberty died from a failed medical experiment involving one of the deadliest substances available. Thomas Paine.
That I can only imagine how painful that death is. Part of me, the morbid part of me wants to know, like scientifically, what would actually happen if you ingested mercury. But I think I'd be wincing at the answer. I'm not sure if I want to know. What physician in their right mind thinks that that is a good idea? There's a lot of these. I was just about to say, oh, well, he didn't attempt this kind of experimental surgery. So, a sensible professional here. And then that was immediately followed by, oh, I've got a better idea. Why don't you ingest this mercury? They should be held accountable, because even back then, by those standards and what they know, that is, it's not just bizarre, it's crazy.
On June 8, 1809, 72-year-old
Thomas
Thomas Paine died in Greenwich Village, New York.
Okay.
Paine was the author of Common Sense, the pamphlet that ignited revolutionary fervor in 1776. By the
Okay.
time of his death, Paine was completely ostracized by American society for his radical views on religion. Only 6 people
Oh.
attended Paine's funeral. He was buried on his farm in New Rochelle, New York.
Poor
The
fella.
revolutionary hero who'd inspired millions died alone and despised. 10 years after Paine's
Aw.
death, an English radical named William Cobbett decided to honor Paine's memory. Cobbett traveled to America specifically to retrieve Paine's remains. In the middle of the night, Cobbett dug up Paine's skeleton. Cobbett packed the bones into a trunk and sailed back to England. He planned to build a massive memorial shrine to honor Paine. However, Cobbett went bankrupt before he could complete the monument.
Oh.
Paine's bones were sold off and passed around as curiosities. Over the decades, the skeleton was scattered and lost. To this day, no one knows where Thomas Paine's bones are. The man who ignited the American Revolution has no grave and no remains. George Wythe. On June 8th,
Oh, just before we move on to George Wythe, that is very sad. The whereabouts of his remains are still not known. Oh, that's really, really sad. What? Oh gosh, I might regret asking this. I might open a can of worms. What were his religious beliefs? What was so controversial that ostracized him and, resulted in only 6 people going to his funeral? Poor Paine. Yeah. It's that's a strange one. I'm really interested now. For an English politician, I imagine, to feel so strongly that, and it must be that he agreed with what the president was saying here. Although I don't think bringing him to England, why that's not, I don't know, the country he served, keep the remains, maybe arrange it in America. I don't think that would be their last wish. Anyway. Oh, okay.
1806, 79-year-old George Wythe died in
George
Richmond,
Wythe.
Virginia. Wythe was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, America's first law professor, and Thomas Jefferson's personal mentor.
Oh.
He was murdered by his own grandnephew. George Wythe Sweeney was Wythe's teenage grandnephew and expected heir. Sweeney was greedy and wanted his inheritance immediately. He decided to poison his elderly uncle to speed up the process. Sweeney poured a massive dose of arsenic into Wythe's morning coffee. Wythe
don't need
drank the
that
poisoned
much.
coffee. The arsenic
I don't
caused
think it would.
immediate and severe symptoms, but Wythe was incredibly tough. Wythe endured 2 weeks of agonizing stomach cramps, vomiting, and
Oh.
internal burning. Despite the agony, Wythe remained conscious and alert. He realized he'd been poisoned and suspected his grandnephew. Wythe lived exactly long enough to call for his lawyer. He rewrote his will, completely disinheriting George Wythe Sweeney.
Ah!
Only after legally cutting off his murderer did Wythe finally succumb to the arsenic poisoning. James Madison. On June 28, 1836, 85-year-old...
Oh my gosh, sorry guys, I've got something going on with my keyboard. It's not pausing it where I'm trying to make it pause. That's horrendous. Does that, it's not an assassination, but it's not far off, is it? A coup, a murder plot. Your own nephew. Oh, he sounds like absolute trash. What a greedy little grubby bugger.
James Madison died at Montpelier, his Virginia estate. Madison was the father of the Constitution and the 4th president of the United States. He was dying of chronic rheumatism and severe liver dysfunction. After Jefferson and Adams both died on July 4, 1826, it became a point of morbid national pride for founding fathers to die on Independence Day. Madison's doctors noticed he was dying in late June 1836.
I don't think it should be an expectation. Oh, they're going to pass when they pass if they can't hold on. That is a very high expectation.
The doctors saw an opportunity to add Madison to the club of patriotic deaths. They offered Madison stimulant drugs that would artificially keep his heart beating until July 4th. The drugs could extend his life just long enough to die on the anniversary.
Oh, that's
Madison
awful.
flatly refused the offer. He considered it a ridiculous parlor trick and refused to artificially prolong his suffering for theatrical purposes. Madison wanted to die naturally, not be kept alive by drugs for symbolism.
But did he
Madison
die on the 4th
stopped
anyway?
eating entirely. He withered away rapidly over the following days. James Madison died on June 28, 1836, 6 days before July 4th. He died on his own terms, refusing to participate in the manufactured patriotic death. If you
I totally agree. Oh, I think we're at the end. You know what? I'll just
enjoyed this video,
wait.
subscribe for similar ones, and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.
There we go.
Thomas
Only had to wait like another 10 seconds. Oh, right. Good for him. Good for him dying on his own terms. Obviously, that's no longer a kind of expectation of a president. Oh, that's no one can control when they die. It's so... The pressure on these poor presidents that are on their deathbed anyway. It is kind of amazing how the other two, like best friends as well, nonetheless, died on the same day. But I don't think that should be a standard for everyone else. Oh my gosh. Okay, there are some fairly bizarre deaths there. There are a handful that they've actually made me wince and grimace. Two very, very gory deaths going on there. I just feel quite strongly that the physicians should have been held accountable for that. I know maybe the knowledge wasn't so much around at the time, but I think even given what they did know, it was really extreme. Okay. Let me know, guys, did you, like, as Americans, for our viewers in the US, as Americans, did you know the majority of these deaths? I know it's not everyone, is it? It's more the unusual ones, I think. But yeah, Bryan, you said you knew about 2 of them. 1 or 2, you know, they did ring a bell from, but that's only because I have seen a video similar to this. I knew maybe 1 or 2, but it's very, very interesting. It's eye-opening. There's a lot of pressure on these poor presidents, isn't there? Oh, bless them. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed watching along with me. Take care of yourselves, my lovelies, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.